Welcome, Tracy, to the Animas Alumni interviews. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good, thank you. It's a nice warm summer's day, but we've just got past the heat wave, so that's a bit better.
It's lovely, isn't it? It was a bit cold this morning, but we it got better as
Yeah,
the
yeah, it's nice when it's cooler overnight, isn't it? To at least get a good night's sleep.
completely. Well, we're really excited to hear about your story and your journey so far as a coach. So if it's okay with you to start off with, if you could do a small and short introduction about you, what you do, and then we can, yeah, dive in deeper.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Tracey Robinson, and my coaching practice is Mother Nature coaching, and I use nature connected coaching now to support women to manage their mental health. And before I trained as a coach, I'd worked 30 years in the NHS. I was still working there, and I did train. I'm an occupational therapist in mental health by background, and then I did a lot of years in management to really to try and improve and transform services to better serve people. And I trained as a coach because I'd started to become quite burnt out with that, and I wanted to be able to find a different way to make a difference for women's mental health.
Mm. Was that the main reason that you decided to train as a coach? If not, what would you say that is?
Yeah, so I'd really, I suppose, like most people, I came to train as a coach because I received some really powerful coaching myself. So
Ah,
I'd worked with the same coach twice. Once at a previous time in my career that I was finding things quite difficult, and I just felt really empowered by that. It'd given me a lot of confidence to move forward and make some changes in my career, and that led me into my favourite job I ever did in the NHS, which was a national role in the field of perinatal mental health, supporting mums. Really setting up services that support mums with mental health when they've had a baby. So that was like my passion for that all came from my own lived experience of postpartum psychosis. But the coach I work with helped me see, how to use that experience to really drive me and not hold me back. So I found that period of coaching with her really helpful. And then a few years ago, I was in a much more senior role. I was managing a big team in like maternity services at that point, which is a very stressful area, as everybody know from seeing in the news. There's a lot of politics and just a lot of difficulties with the services and the system. So I like saw some coaching again. Really, at the time, I thought I was seeking coaching to help me be resilient, to keep coping in that environment and keep leading my team well and doing a good job and making a difference. But through that coaching, I came to realise that I wanted to make some bigger changes in my life and career to
mm,
better look after my own well-being. And during the course of that coaching, I started to think, okay, what's important to me? I want to continue making a difference, but I want to support my own mental health and well-being more particularly because I was starting to sort of struggle with perimenopause, with anxiety symptoms, and just those kind of difficulties that many people have in perimenopause and menopause. And it was becoming increasingly difficult to cope with the way I was working and the pressure I was under. So through that coach, if I want to do something different, what can I do? How can I make a difference? What can I enjoy? And I made lots of long lists and sort of training to be a coach myself, like always came to top of the list because I knew it was
wow.
from my own experience of receiving it. It was such a powerful way to make a difference to others. So that's what really led me to train. With Animas about 3 years ago now.
Wow. This was the second round of coaching that
Yes,
the
yeah.
position. How did you find the coach? Was it via the NHS or actually you sought out for a coach yourself?
Yeah, so the first time I'd seen that coach, she'd be doing her training. She'd been doing her coach training with a different provider, and she was looking for practice clients. So because I'd worked with her before and knew we had a good relationship, knew that she understood mental health as well as coaching. And yeah, after that, I'd worked with a few other coaches and team coaches around the NHS, but she was the coach that I'd always had the best relationship with. So I And I saw on social media she was still practicing, and I think she was running a kind of a lunchtime webinar which sounded helpful and relevant. So I went along to that and realised I really wanted to work with her again as a coach.
Mhm. Oh, that's so good. Uh, later on, actually, I think it might be a good um, bit to explore the support in NHS, because we've definitely had people who have come from the NHS like yourself, and then also people who maybe want to go into mental health or
Mm,
around the clinical space and not quite sure how to go about it. So maybe you've got some experience and expertise basically around
mm,
how might someone do that. But so after the realization that okay, at the top of the list, coaching was always there, um, you found Animas. How did the approach resonate with you? Because obviously there are so many different ones. How did you come
yeah.
to the decision?
Yeah, so I started exploring different coach training providers, and I went to quite a few of the introductory webinars, and I chose Animas because coming from a professional background as a registered occupational therapist, I was keen to use a coach training provider that seemed like to have a very robust type of training. I liked, because of my mental health interest, I liked the fact that it was psychologically linked, the holistic nature of it, the whole way different methods are coming together and the way coaching can be used in different settings. And, I liked the idea of being in a small cohort where I'd sort of build a relationship with the same people. And I also liked that if I was going to invest in coach training, that it was kind of the initial training was at quite a high level in terms of the competencies needed and the accreditation, and that I definitely served me well last year. Yeah, about sort of 9 months ago, I achieved my ACC qualification with the ICF. And as I was looking into what was needed for that and, doing my preparation for that exam, I was really grateful that I'd chosen a coach training provider that had really got me to the level of having all the mentoring hours I needed, all the practice hours I needed, so that I only had to, at that later point, really think about the tools and techniques, being ready for the exam and having enough hours, because I realised that other people preparing for the ACC were having to look for their mentoring hours and their practice hours and things. But I had all that, so I felt like it put me in a really strong position right from the beginning of my time as a coach.
Mhm. Oh, that's such that's great feedback. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, we really do try our best. And I'm curious about your occupational therapy experience, because people who come from that background, their question is there going to be too much overlap with the course? So I'm
Mm,
wondering how you found that if, yeah, what was your experience with your previous experience and then the coaching
yeah, I
training?
mean, there definitely were overlaps, and there were things. I mean, I trained as an occupational therapist a long time before that training. It was probably like close to 30 years later, but I'd obviously was continued to use that in my practice. And occupational therapy is, about helping people set goals, and it is a holistic, client-centered way of working. But I did like during the training, I realised like coaching was very different, and particularly different than occupational therapy in the NHS, where there's a lot of prescribed outcome measures, a lot of prescribed assessment tools and ways of working with people. I really realised the difference in coaching was it being so much more client-led, like very much coming into sessions quite open, finding out what the client wants to explore, being very led by them, and maybe the outcome of the session not being related to what they expected. So in a sense, it was, less prescriptive, but also, yeah, kind of more broadly looking at things in a client's life, because occupational therapy is very holistic, but it's also probably often the person's coming to you as an occupational therapist to mainly focus on one part of their life or one particular set of problems.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so the coaching gave more maybe not just depth but also width. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact obviously that coaching often, when you work in an occupational therapy in any kind of clinical setting, there's some kind of eligibility criteria and level of difficulty people have to be like eligible to receive that. But see, as a coach, I'm practicing independently or having your practice hours with, contacts and colleagues. It's also helping people through things that might be less severe, that aren't disabling them so much, but yet holding them back in some way in their life and their personal development, and how content they might be, or how what they can achieve.
So it expanded also, I suppose, your scope. But I'm does a does a situation come to mind where when you were training, or maybe even post training, that you saw the difference from before doing the training and after in your occupational therapy, or maybe it's in your management, day to day? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, by the time I did the training, I was in management roles rather than clinical roles.
I see.
Um, I think rather than a situation, I realised the coaching really helped with my active listening. I'd always
Mhm.
taken quite a coaching type approach to my line management, but I just feel the coaching training helped me to listen better, and step back more, and help the people I was managing kind of come to their own solutions.
It's often what comes up maybe in 90% of the conversations. It's that stepping back uh, that
Mm.
that deepens with the training. What else stood out for you during the animas training?
Um, so I said I like chose it because I wanted to be with a cohort, with a close cohort, and I think it's 12, isn't it? Around 12 of us, and that really, yeah, that really did make a difference. I think it really stood out the way we grew together and been able to see other people's growth and skills develop, to see the other people become more confident, and to build deeper relationships from some of the other people in that cohort. We as a cohort, we still got a WhatsApp group. We will try and keep in touch on there sometimes, but yeah, there's somebody I met only on the course. There was somebody who happened to be on my cohort I knew from before, so we're still in touch. But there was also
Oh,
somebody in another country. I'm in the UK, she's in Iceland, and we met on the course and through doing the coach and practices together on the course and being put into our triad to meet up and practice outside the course. We've developed a very close relationship. We still do peer coaching with each other now. We support each other with our business development, and she's been to the UK to meet up, and I'm planning to go and meet up with her. And I think that really started from going on that journey together and just the little connections we made on the course. So yeah, that kind of cohort and the able to build relationships with other people at the beginning of their coaching journey really, really did stand out, I think.
yeah. Oh, that's so nice to hear. I think what often people maybe don't realize straight away is when you go through a course like this, the nature of it, because you're coaching each other, you naturally also become more vulnerable and learn so much more
Mm,
about
mm,
each other. I remember someone said that some of you here know me more than my closest family and friends, just because
mm.
of that you really do get close. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. People ask about clients. How did you find practice clients during the course? Yeah.
Yeah, so when I was training, I was still working in the NHS.
Mhm.
So I found a lot of my practice clients at that time by kind of asking around at work, speaking to, there's obviously colleagues in my own team were too close for me to coach, but I mentioned I was doing the training. I asked around if someone I knew, didn't know well in the workplace. Through a work-based conversation, I found that they were just, struggling with something. I perhaps gently offered coach and mentioned I was doing the training. So I think for me, yeah, most of my practice clients at that time were in the workplace, plus my peer kind of coach and practice clients that I'd met, on the
Mm,
Animus cohort when we had our coaching sessions,
mm,
outside of the training. They could also be counted as practice hours.
How did you find the contracting with your colleagues? Was that okay? Setting up that container, because obviously this is, yeah, I wondered if it was different from the day-to-day agreements.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it was very different, and I didn't coach anybody I would otherwise. There were people I'd come across in the workplace rather than I was working closely within my own team. So, made it clear, obviously, about the confidentiality, also about the coaching is entirely for them and what they want to talk about. It's not to do with the employer and what would go on in the organisation, and I wouldn't be taking it out. I did sort of really after I'd qualified, I did like do some voluntary internal coaching,
Mm.
and that, but again, kind of that was quite a very like employee-centered coaching arrangement. So it wasn't an internal coach, as in reporting back to the manager what's going on. It was something they self-signed up for. So yeah, I was lucky in that way.
Yeah, amazing. And now going into your work now, Mother Nature coaching, how did you create this? Was that there before when you were doing the training, or it happened? Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so the real spark for it from when we did the training, I guess, was there was two parts of the course that really resonated with me that I thought this is what I really want to use in my practice. And one was when the trainer mentioned about walking coaching, and I thought, oh, that sounds good because when you're walking outdoors, you can have more open conversations, and the movement of walking kind of almost helps you move forward. So, and the other part I really the part of the training I most enjoyed was the part about metaphor, the use of metaphor in coaching. So that got me kind of sparked towards, a lot of metaphors are about nature. And then I discovered this podcast, Coaching Outdoors. So I was always looking for things to use for my personal. I discovered this podcast, Coaching Outdoors, that basically had guests on there, was hosted by, and had guests on who were coaches that had taken their work outdoors, and then they have a regular event. The people that run that podcast have a regular annual event, the Coaching Outdoors. I mean, the first year I went, I called it a conference, but it was actually, it's full of workshops. It was delivered outdoors, so it felt almost more like a cross between a retreat and professional development. I met, more people who were doing that type of coaching, and I just realised. I kind of wanted to be doing my coaching outdoors. I realised that coaching in and with nature creates such a rich space for change and transformation. And really, I think the other part of the training that really resonated with me and was quite a revelation to me, really, after all my years of working in a system, was about trusting your intuition and making your decisions based on your intuition, which is obviously a key thing we're trying to tap into as coaches and for and with the clients we're working with. And I just found when I was in nature, when clients were in nature, seemed so much easier for them to shut out all that external noise, connect back to nature and connect to their intuition when they were making decisions about their next steps or their next actions, or to notice how they were really feeling about things.
So, because I was going to ask you, what do you think is different in nature that really fosters that? Yeah. Do you have an answer?
Yeah, yeah, no, I think yeah, there is something about shutting out the external noise, about feeling safe, about coming back in to your true self, away from the office environment, away from a screen. I think a big part is about how much our nervous system is regulated in nature. So, when we're in a session online, when we're in an office or whatever, our nervous system might be stimulated by the artificial light, by, finding it difficult not to a bit tune into that screen on the other side of the room where your emails are. And when our nervous system's, not regulated, then our thinking's not as clear. I find in nature, the thinking's more creative as well. So
Mm.
as a coach, I can think perhaps more clearly and creatively about questions, or, where to kind of guide the client to within the session. But also clients tend to come up with more creative thinking, more creative ideas from having a clearer mind and thinking more clearly.
That's beautiful. It's when the nervous system calming down, I think that's the
Mm,
beginning of all of the opening of that tuning into the self, the intuition.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like you
And
said.
obviously, that's what I've found myself personally. It's what I find with clients, but there's also, a big evidence base for that as well, a big evidence base for, what being in nature does to our minds and our bodies, because in fact we are nature. Our modern lifestyles and the environments we're working and living in kind of separate us from nature, but actually we are nature. As human beings, we've evolved in nature, and that's how that's how our bodies and our minds function best. So when we're there,
Mm.
naturally it's the place we're going to get the most out of being coached or coaching, because we're back to our true selves and our true nature.
Mm. I imagine there's a lot of insight and information that just the inspiration can come from being and then also, yeah,
Yeah,
noticing.
so it's about I guess it's about connecting with nature as well as being in nature as well. So there's so many metaphors in nature. Um, I was coaching with a client outdoors last week, and we were walking, and she chose to stop to look at the lake, and we noticed there was this water rushing in, and I just, asked a gentle question: "Is there anything here that reminds you of what's going on in your own life?" And she talked about, "Oh yeah, the water's really murky. There's lots of things going round in my head." And so I think, the nature metaphors and connecting with what's there and noticing what there, it can bring an insight, but it can also help with noticing. So, I mean, a good example for me is I sort of on a self coach, I took myself on a walk and was in a dilemma about what to do about something, about a contract I've been offered in my business that wasn't feeling right. And I thought, oh, this feels really uncomfortable. I feel really anxious, don't know what to do. And I went on a walk, and it was autumn, and I thought, I'm just going to notice what nature's doing, what the messages are. And I thought, well, the trees are, the trees are here, and I noticed the trees are growing in the direction of the light. They're turning towards the light. I noticed the trees are losing their leaves because they're losing them. They trust that they can lose what's no longer right for them, what's done with, and they trust that, come next spring, there'll be new, fresh growth. So it's all that type of thing, just those natural metaphors in nature. And I think nature has so much to teach us about how to go with the flow, how to go with the seasons, how to let things go, how to move towards abundance. There's just, so much there that often if you're walking with a client, they'll pick it out themselves, or you can use a gentle prompt, or, ask a question based on that. So yeah, it's like often like the nature connected coaches. I know, is there sometimes it's nature is doing the coaching really. There's like even less work for the coach to do with holding the space, because nature is there with the messages, and it's just helping people notice that.
I've had so many waves of goosebumps, as you described all of
Mm,
that, because there's
mm.
such a resonance and a truth to what you're saying. Well, I'm really curious. What does it look like? So you mentioned that you stopped by the water with your client. How do you how do you contract that with the person? Do you have well-established routes, or is it quite open? What does that look like? Yeah.
Yeah, so I've done additional training in coaching outdoors, and things to consider
Ah,
with the
okay.
contracted and the method. And I try and, depending what type of session it is, because I do some group walks as well, where it's a bit more structured, some mindful well-being walks in nature, which are more gentle coaching questions. But with a one-to-one client, it's very much the contracting is about letting it be client-led. I to look out for the time. I try and choose like locations that I know, and I know where the routes are and roughly how long things will take.
Mm,
But one of the things is about the pace being set by the client. And that's another beautiful thing with coaching in nature, is if they arrive stressed, we might be walking quite fast. but you can physically feel it slowing down as they get into the session. So yeah, and there is a bit more contracting to do at the outset of, and a bit more guidance and holding the space as a coach about, being aware of the weather and the conditions, and knowing things like whether that client doesn't like dogs, or, has got some kind of physical limitation and they might want to sit down. But what I say to them, again, the session, it's their space to be outdoors. They can choose the route. If we want to sit down, they normally choose that to sit down, unless I
Mhm.
can see something that's a view that really resonates with, what they're talking about. And I might gently suggest, oh, should we take a seat here? Because I can see there's something there for them. But yeah, it's still like client led, but obviously the coach having to be much more aware of the
Yeah.
environment and feeling familiar and confident in that environment, and also sort of giving some contact in advance to, just to point out in obviously a gentle, suggestive way, or it looks like it'll be raining tomorrow, so you might want to bring an umbrella, or if you'd like to, we can use the cafe instead if you'd prefer not to walk in the rain, because there's all that to consider as well about the weather conditions and what I'm comfortable with. They might not be. I think as a coach, if you're going to let it be client led, you've got to be comfortable with all conditions, because there are
Yeah.
many people who are perfectly comfortable to walk in the teeming rain, and you've got to make sure you're equipped with the right
Yeah.
shoes and weather gear or whatever, if you're committed to kind of coaching outdoors, whatever the weather, and being client led with it. I do try to choose locations where there's toilets, so people can be physically comfortable and, have those needs met, and where there's a cafe that they might want to grab a drink to take with them or afterwards. And I try to take the additional stress out of it by making sure I'm, being clear about the maps to the location, what to expect when they get there about parking or parking charges, etc., so that the additional stress that might be created by having to get to a place is taken away. And obviously, when you've done a lot of sessions with that same client in the same place, they become very familiar with that, and you don't need to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So it's just a different way of setting the container up, really, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah. And
yeah.
it's a choice as well, of course, because when I say I coach in nature, I walk and talk with clients, but I can also bring nature into an online session if that's
Yeah.
somebody's
Mhm.
choice. And the other thing is, we don't have to be in the same location to coach outdoors, because like my peer coach in Iceland, for example, we've done practice, our kind of coaching sessions and coaching each other on the phone. So we're each walking in a different location. And again, that brings up very rich things. There was a really interesting metaphor in that I couldn't see where she was walking. I knew we'd shared a video screen at the beginning because we did it on WhatsApp. So we saw where each other were. So we had that sense of each other's kind of space. But then we walked, and then it kept coming up in the coaching conversation about seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I noticed she said it a few times. So I asked, oh, is there anywhere around you where you can see something like that? Notice you'd mentioned a light at the end of the tunnel. Is there anywhere you could walk through if it is that? And she said, well, funny you said that, because just in front of me there's this tunnel of trees. And I think it might have been
Amazing.
snowing there at the time as well, so it was quite bright. She said, I can see the light at the end of it. So, I suggested we walked through that together. I was on the phone, I wasn't with her, and what does it feel like to head towards the light? What does the light look like? So
Yeah.
using those kind of metaphors, but in a really kind of practical, lived sense.
Yeah, it's so rich. That's what I'm getting. It
Mm,
this
mm,
this type of work, and I also think it opens up an opportunity for a lot of people who love being active and maybe find the online sessions, or maybe just sitting for an extent, even just 45 minutes to an hour, a little bit difficult, isn't it? So
yeah, yeah.
it's a very active and dynamic way
Yeah,
of
yeah. And I think
sessions.
also just bringing someone outside of the place where they're normally working or
Yeah.
living, automatically creates a different perspective and a chance to
Yes.
look at things differently. And the client, yeah, a client that I've been working with outdoors for a while. When we started, we'd been working online, and then I was doing this coaching outdoors training, and I needed to do some practice. I just, suggested that's something I could offer if she'd like to. We've never gone back indoors since. And initially, one of the things she liked about that is she knew she had that time in the day when she'd get out for a walk, because otherwise she knew even if she intended to get outdoors and take a break, she'd just be sat at the screen all day.
Oh my goodness. This is amazing information. Thank you so much, Tracy. I don't think you mentioned how you fell upon the nature niche, I would say. How did you know that you wanted to do this?
I
Yeah.
think just because of yeah, I was exploring kind of what appealed to me in coaching, and
Mm,
liked the idea of the walking coaching. And I think I probably started, I don't want to say list, started to look that up, and that's when I came across the podcast of coaching outdoors and realised it was possible to do that. And then came across some of the books about that as well, and started to find out more, attending the conferences, building a lot of my coach networks now are with other coaches that work outdoors and in and with nature. That's kind of just where I find myself drawn to, and the kind of coaching that's resonating. Um, yeah, so that was really where it came from, is just discovering it was a thing, and just again
yes.
tapping into my intuition that this is the thing that feels right for me. This
Mm,
is, I think, what I want to do, because going back to one of my reasons for coaching about being supporting my own well-being, I've realised since I've come away from a management job that was a lot of time online, that some of the burnout was related to sitting a long time
mm,
online. And I've realised that a way to support my well-being through the work I do is to be outdoors more,
mm,
and to be in nature and deepen my own connection with nature. So,
mm.
being able to take clients out there in a way that supports their well-being and mine is just a kind of a beautiful working lifestyle, really.
Yeah. The thread was always there, basically. The clues were always there. It kind of led.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just I've sort of gravitated more and more towards it. When I was first discovered it, I was like trying my niche I was working with was about supporting women returning to work after mental health problems and maternity leave, because of that being my personal and professional background. But then I added into it, supporting them using nature connected coaching, but it was quite hard to it's quite hard for people to make sense of that and marry the two together and think that's the coach for me. So now I just more talk about coaching in nature as my niche, or as my lead kind of headline. And I as well as doing one-to-one coaching, I run group walks, like mindful well-being walks for overwhelmed women. And so it's not one-to-one coaching, it's groups, but it's bringing in some mindfulness tools, it's inviting some gentle reflection in nature. So it's, using nature to help people get insights into themselves and manage their overwhelm, in a different way.
Yeah, amazing. And that clarity came in, as you practice, basically, that actually Mother
Yeah,
Nature and it
yeah,
all encompasses. It's clear.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And it is that whole thing of tapping into kind of I remember one of the phrases in the training about what feels light and what feels heavy, like just trying to be aware what feels light for me and what feels heavy, and what feels like intuitively the right thing to do that makes me feel good and serve clients best. And being outdoors is always, so it seems to be the answer to that.
yeah. Oh my goodness. And you mentioned the group walks and the events. Uh, what tools have been useful for you regarding that? Do you have any advice around that regarding setting setting those events? Because I speak to a lot of prospective students, and they tend to ask, how do I make that work? What has helped? Yeah.
Mm, mm. I mean, definitely, I'd say what was helpful for me is trying to take part in similar things that other people are organising. So you start to, being on the receiving end of that, you start to see what feels important in the booking process, what feels safe, what information you need to know. So there's a lot of learning from that, I think, from taking part in things. I took part in a few forest therapy bathing sessions, and
Mm.
yeah, just seeing how you kind of structure that. Um, and I mean, some of the stuff I still find tougher is all the technical background stuff, like working out what ticketing system to do, how to market it online, how to get people there, those things I still don't find easy. But these days, something like I don't use AI for help with any of my content because I like to be authentic, but I do use AI to help me work out how to do some of the technical things like
Yes.
which tool is good for issuing online tickets, this type of thing. So that definitely helps with some of the background. I think with organising like walks and events as well for your own confidence and to serve people best when they're where, you have got to take the time to visit the setting, to be familiar with the setting, to plan what's there. Obviously, risk assessment is really important. So there is a lot of background to it of but there also are lots of books and training courses and things available that people can go on if they want to go down that route to really and like the animas training, those things walk you experientially through what you need to know.
So yeah, I suppose like in a journey, what we've kind of talked about is you heard the call, went on the training, followed your intuition, and then just really continued to follow what interested you. And then the practical things will it is figure outable.
Yeah,
That's
oh, definitely. It
yeah.
feels, and it, sometimes I've definitely found it overwhelming, the figuring out the practical things behind building a business. And I think there's a lot of information and tools out there. And what I've learned is you just have to again listen to your intuition about which of those things are right for you. Because there's lots of people, selling lots of wonderful business development ideas and social media help and offering free webinars and, lots of things like that. And I've definitely taken bits from all of those. But I think my top tip would be you have to find the way of doing things that's right for you. So for kind of marketing wise, I'm not, I do post regularly on LinkedIn. I've built a big network on there.
Mm,
I'm
mm,
less keen on other social media, but what I find appeals to me and again feels light and feels good to me is going out and doing face-to-face networking at women's business networking groups and building, because I think for people to work with you as a coach or running any sort of group facilitation, if you're, selling to individuals rather than to businesses or companies, a lot of it does come down to the know, like, and trust thing. So if you go into face-to-face network, seeing the same people again, talking about what you do, presenting authentically with your own story and being interested in them as well, that's the way to build those relationships where people then want to work with you. And I also do like to do interviews like this and podcasts because I think, I like to tell my whole story and, I think make it clear as well. I'm not the finished article or the finished picture at all. This is
mm.
the journey I'm on, and nature connection and walking has been a big answer to me. And I want to bring that to other people and help them find solutions that way.
Mm, so much good stuff in there. What else is wanting to be expressed for you, Tracey? You mentioned sharing your full story. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I guess, I wouldn't pretend it's been an easy journey, but the
Mm,
answer I think has always been following my intuition, even looking at my old vision board that I originally developed with a previous coach, 4 or 5 years ago, of what was on it and what's important to me. And to keep as you build your business or decide where you want to go with your coach and think kind of what's my North Star? What do I want this to do for me? What do I want it to do for my clients? But I think you've always got to be led to what is it that's going to work for me? Because if you go into a way of working or a type of work or working with a type of clients that isn't appealing, you become burnt out and then can't be a good coach for them. So there is that element to present to your clients best and be making those sessions about them and be client centered in the sessions. You've got to be in that good place yourself, and it's definitely an ongoing journey of development and discovery. I mean, I feel I'm still at really beginning stages of it, of a way. It's a kind of an ongoing transition. But as training as a coach, doing the exercises we did in Animas, learning the ways to coach each other, to kind of coach ourselves, to question things, and
Mm,
really develops, I think, your self-awareness and emotional intelligence, and
mm,
helps you on that journey in a way that other things in my life and career haven't necessarily. It's about helping to find yourself along the way.
mm. And I know some people have this question too. So the message is to follow your intuition. What has been your favorite practices or maybe ways of maybe if someone doesn't know what does that, how do I follow my intuition? How would you help
Mm.
them? Yeah.
Yeah, in a way, I'd say, yeah, just somebody came to me with a question recently about a decision she needed to make in her career. It wasn't a coaching client, it was an ex-colleague. And I said, well, what I'd advise is go for a walk. If you're not sure how you
Yes.
feel or what you want to do about that, or what, just go for a walk. Just gently take the question, let your nervous system be regulated, look what's around you in nature, and, just try and connect to your self and how it really feels inside. Think about that somatic side of things. What are my feelings here? What does, if on that walk, think about this option or that option, how does it really feel inside? And, use that to guide you.
My sense of that is like it is a looking inside.
Mm,
Um, Going into nature is um, enhancing that calming of that nervous system,
yeah,
increasing
yeah.
that presence so that you can look inside and listen to
Yeah,
that
yeah,
intuition. Yeah.
absolutely. Being in nature is very grounding, and sort of I do on the mindfulness walks and at the beginning of coaching sessions as well, whether it's online, outdoors, on the phone, try and do a kind of grounding in nature exercise of just standing still, being aware of your feet on the ground, just to sort of come back into yourself. I think that's it, being in nature, we like can come back into ourselves, be grounded
Mm.
into ourselves before we kind of think through our issue or make a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose maybe this could be the last question as well. For someone who is maybe on the verge or maybe not quite sure if they want to take this coaching training step, do you have anything to share around that?
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think to say it's going to be more than you think it is, because it sets you off on kind of almost a lifelong journey of self-development and self-exploration. So even if you do the training and never end up becoming a coach, or never kind of use it to coach others, or you put it aside for a few years because of your other life commitments or career changes, you're getting so much yourself out of that training, and it sparks things in you that you probably didn't know that were there. So, like many kind of coaching sessions in the transformative style that we learn at Animes, what you start with is your goal, and what you think you're going to get, what you come out at the other end is probably going to be something much richer and perhaps different than what you expected, that really kind of moves your life or your career forward in a way that's probably more aligned with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's a leap into the unknown. It's being okay with that, isn't it? Because
Mm.
it's such an open space once you actually dive into it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And just the people you meet
Mm.
on the cohort from the different backgrounds they've come from, that's just opening up your eyes and your thinking in itself. Because as you say, during the course, you're coaching each other and you're hearing people's stories, and that in itself is really rich and is normally, a different range of people than you might normally get to meet in your everyday life and work. So that's, yeah, the real start of that journey of knowing people differently and knowing the world differently.
That's such a good point. Absolutely. Yeah. I keep on saying open and expansion, but it really is, isn't it? Like,
Mm, mm,
I think we can come into the course with a certain bandwidth of our experience, and then
mm.
it
Yeah,
it's yeah,
yeah,
it blows open.
yeah. But what I might say then is be careful, because there's no turning back once you've
Yeah,
made that open.
exactly,
It
exactly
is
that.
kind of yeah, it is sort of life changing, whatever you do or don't do with it as a qualification, it is life changing to do the training.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for that. That has been such an amazing testament as well to, doing this type of work. And I love what you are doing and your mission. Where can people find you? Where's best?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah, if you find Tracey Robinson, you'll see my Mother Nature coaching on there. That's my main platform. I have got a Facebook page for Mother Nature coaching, which I will admit I'm less keen on using. So those are probably the best places. I will be shortly developing my website, which will be www.mothernaturecoaching.com. So yeah, they're the key places, and you'll find probably LinkedIn is my most preferred active place at the moment.
Amazing.
And
We'll
I'd love
link.
to connect with other coaches and particularly people that are like interested to move towards nature connected coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it might be useful to share. I don't know if you're open to this. Please, you can absolutely decline. But if people want to go on the walks with you, yeah, where are you based,
But yeah,
Tracey?
so I'm based in Kent in the UK, and I've got a couple of locations around Gravesend and Maidstone at the moment where I'm offering walks. I'm looking to expand those, and as well as my offering of mindful wellbeing walks for overwhelmed women, which I call Well Walks. You can take that acronym from there as a Wow Walk. I'm also developing some collaborations with other nature connected coaches to offer some longer staged walks to take people on transformative journeys. So they're all up and coming. So if people follow me, they start to find out about those as they'll develop. They're all kind of around London and the southeast Surrey way. So and that's I think yeah, there's such I suppose that's the other thing is there's like so many ways of opening out the coaching beyond a one-to-one set 1 hour question. There's so many ways to use the skills to take people on longer journeys, to have a whole day's walking in a group and use coaching skills and questions within that. So, yeah, there's a lot of ways. That's the other thing, I suppose, with the training. There's a lot of ways you can take it beyond what you might first think.
Yeah, completely, not just one to one. It evolves as you evolve as a
Yeah,
practitioner.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Tracey, how was the building of the business part? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, that's definitely like been the toughest part because we talked about tapping into intuition, but there is a time when you've got to get down to the work and the technical side of things and you've got to know something. And I was, a senior person in the NHS, and assistant director, and, been in the NHS 30 years, and I didn't, I sort of knew nothing at all about starting my own business. I really craved to be out on my own and not have all the kind of governance and the boards and all the complexities of being in that structured kind of, system, kind of quite a corporate environment, the part of the NHS I was in. I really like was thinking, perhaps naively, I want the simplicity of running my own business. But when you get to the reality of it, of course, it's not that simple. It's a very steep learning curve from the basics of how do I have a business kind of bank account, from how do I get where and how do I get my professional insurance, to what are the kind of tech systems I need, what social media do I need to do, how do I need to do the marketing. And I think like most coaches would say, the marketing's the toughest part because we want to be authentic and we want to be speaking from the heart, and there's definitely ways of doing that. So it's been a steep learning curve, and it has taken, longer than I thought. And I've still got a long way to go to build a business that's fully financially lucrative. Luckily, I have some flexibility and some time because I took early retirement for the NHS. So I'd say, if I didn't have that kind of backing and had just given up a job, and relied on building a salary, I would have perhaps had to compromise more on my intuition or my ideal client group. But I think there's definitely lots of tools and webinars and people out there like helping build a business. There's some really good podcasts you can listen to about helping you build a business.
Mhm.
But when you don't know anything, it's easy to think I must do it this way because someone says that's how they've done it or that's their tool, but that might not work for you. So it's another area I think where you have to listen in to think what's going to feel comfortable and right for me.
Mm,
in terms of both what you charge, about the clients you target, about the way you talk about the difference you can make. And it is also, you just have to be quite careful, I think, on LinkedIn and places. There's an awful lot of people out there all around the world who are very clever at noticing that's a coach trying to build a business and are constantly trying to connect with you and send messages about I can help you do this. And I think, oh, I can help you build, 10K months within 3 months. These things are just not realistic. That's not
mm,
how it works. So you do have to yeah, be careful about who you engage with to get business support from, and be careful about promises that feel too good to be true.
mm, mm. And would you say that, I don't know if you did work with a coach in the end, or maybe it was the workshops and it all kind of started to come together? Yeah. What has been
Um,
helpful?
yeah, so I've tried
Mhm,
different things, taken different things from different places.
mhm,
So I was like, I've been in Catherine Watkins' community for a while, who I know
mhm.
works with Animas, trained with Animas, and actually my original coach recommended her. So, that is all about selling from the heart. So I was there for a
Yes.
while until I got to a certain stage. So that was really helpful. Um,
Mm,
yeah, so that was the main thing. I joined up, and I, had a monthly membership and took a lot of that. And I think the nice thing about that is Catherine is a coach by background, so there's a lot of mindset and vision in work and that as well that helps you with whatever you're doing, keep on track with what feels right for you and is working to your future goals. So yeah, I think that's a place where I, found good support that felt aligned.
yeah, absolutely. And also we tend to mention how long it takes
Mm,
to build a business, and that's certainly one of the questions that people ask. Just to give a sense for the listeners, when you qualified and at what
yeah.
stage you're in, that would be great.
Yeah, so I qualified just over 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I left my kind of my big senior NHS job, took the early retirement a few months after that. So basically 2 years ago. Then I went back 2 days a week for a while. And what's
Mm-hmm.
interesting about that is I thought I could work 2 days a week and still build the business in the background, but I found that quite restrictive just because of some of the culture of the NHS and them not being, about what you are and aren't allowed to share on social media and things like that. I found it quite tough mindset wise to build the business alongside that. But I think other people in other types of work that perhaps aren't suffering from burnout or the work's like less directly related to what they're doing in their coaching business, I think that's something that would work. And I spent a long time, exploring different niches as well and trying putting out a few different niches and trying to sort of see what felt aligned and what felt comfortable. And I launched a Mother Nature coaching a year ago, but initially that was with a niche within it of coaching women returning to work after mental health
Mm.
problems on maternity leave. And it's only been probably, within the last 3 or 4 months, I thought, no, this is the nature connected coach, and I really want to focus on as my leading thing. That's where I want to take things. So I think, yeah, so it's been over 2 years since I qualified, and I'm still in a way at the early stages of having found exactly what I want to do and with who and how.
Yeah.
So
No,
it's definitely, not something where you're going to build a successful business within the first month or two.
yeah, completely. Yeah, because we tend to say year one is just for training. The training is step one, isn't
Yeah,
it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean the other thing, I think it was about 18 months after the initial, my initial qualification with Animas was I got my ACC qualification or certification. Um, Yes, but also I'd say as well, like if you are in a day job or even a part-time one where you can do some internal coaching, that is handy to carry on doing if you can, because that's a way to continue to get your coaching practice, to continue explore the type of people you like working with and enjoy working with, continue to get your hours towards your ACC or any other qualifications, I guess, with other bodies that you're looking for, because it's harder to build your hours just having private clients.
Yeah, completely. And I just want to check on time, by the way, because we've gone over a time,
Yeah,
Tracy.
no,
Is that
it's
okay with
fine.
you?
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Because on the topic of the ACC, how was that experience, and did you always know that you wanted to get a credential? Yeah, was that like?
Yeah, I think I always knew I wanted to get the further credential because, again, I think I am quite influenced by having a professional background, being in
Yes.
a kind of a registered health profession and being aware of the importance of that professional accreditation, really for myself, because I think a lot of times clients don't understand those bodies or those accreditations and they don't know what it is. I mean, I think, if you're in corporate or business environments, they probably do more so and they're looking for that. But I think for me it was important to know that as I continued practicing, I was also keeping pure to what I'd learned and the principles of coaching and
Yeah.
to have my own kind of internal credibility that I'm
Yes.
I haven't lost track because over time, of course, beyond that original, beyond that first certification and the intensity of all that time you're learning and doing your regular practice and having mentor coaches, etc. Obviously, you could go quite off track. So it was also really helpful the period I spent sort of revising for that ACC exam, the period I spent going back over all my notes from Animas and just reminding myself of some of the core, a lot of the core underlying principles just to keep me on track.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the credibility, the due diligence as a practitioner
Mm,
as well. And, I think for people who tend to say that coaching is not a regulated industry, it
yeah,
is
yeah,
regulated. We are self-regulating with our professional coaching
yeah.
bodies that we're accredited by.
Yeah, because that's one of the tough things when you've got to be marketing and you're on social media, or even sometimes when you're out networking, you're coming across all these people that are calling themselves coaches, and you think, but you haven't got a coaching qualification or coach training because of it being unregulated. So it's important for myself to be able to know I can be distinguishable. And yeah, and important within kind of building relationships with other nature connected coaches and some of the collaborations I'm developing for me and them to know that we've got the same underlying values and principles and ethics around our work.
Yeah, completely. That has been so useful. And I think what you've just added to the conversation is because our advice is after that year one of training, that it takes 3 to 5 years to get to that
Yeah,
place of sustainable practice because you're learning. So, working towards a credential, you're learning the business part of the coaching practice, and then also clarifying your niche. You're finding who you are as a coach as well as a
yeah,
practitioner,
yeah,
and that all
absolutely.
takes time and experience. Well, thank you for that. We'll definitely add everything in the YouTube description, all of your links, and hopefully, I would love to visit Kent and join a walk. I think that would be amazing. I've never had an experience
Mm,
like that actually. Like a day where it's also coaching and then also
yeah,
a
yeah.
walk. Yeah.
I can send you a link to the actual whale walks to the ticket
Yes,
booking
please.
website for the whale walks. That'd be good to include if I didn't already.
Yeah, amazing. We'll put that all in the description.
Brilliant. Lovely.
Thank
Thank you.
you, Tracy.